Hello, Captain.
Frankly, I would have been surprised if you hadn't
Captain
recognized me.
Fairgraves.
Yes, 'tis I, Captain Sigmund Fairgraves. So, what am I doing here? Apart from blowing my own bugle? I'm marooned, languishing, thanks to a pair of pretty blue eyes.
The sirens, huh?
Stuck fast in the filthy mud of Rayclast, thanks to
Oh.
one sultry little slave girl. I liberated her from the flesh pits of Trathos, and she repaid me in full with sleight of hand, swift feet. Turned the coat of my first mate, took my hard-earned all-flame, and with it, the wind
Jeez.
out of me sails.
She cleaned him out.
Find my all-flame, I beg of you.
Shenanigans, back again, and welcome to MMOMG. This month, I'm playing the action RPG Path of Exile. I know there's going to be some controversy over whether PoE actually counts as an MMO, so let's just go ahead and get that out of the way right now. In a loose sense, Path of Exile meets the requirements of an MMO. It's online, thousands of players connect to it, which you can technically interact with via chat, trading, forming a party, or doing PvP. Calling it a full MMORPG is incorrect, though, as it simply doesn't have most of the social content staples, such as guilds, group dungeons, auctions, or player markets. Additionally, the game is heavily instanced. Wilderness maps are only shared between party members, and even towns hold a very limited number of players. So, now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and look at the game itself. So starting off, you need to choose a character class. You have 6 options as a new player, with a 7th class unlocking later on. Starting out, you might want to pick whatever class has the playstyle you prefer until you get a better understanding of the game's mechanics. There's a number of concepts to wrap your head around in Path of Exile, and doing so will take some time. The first thing to explain about PoE before going any further is the passive skill tree. All characters have access to the same gigantic skill tree, but their starting position on the tree is determined by their class. Path of Exile also has 3 main stats, that of Strength, Dexterity, and Intelligence, and each class prioritizes a unique combination of these 3 stats. So with all that in mind, here are the core classes. The Marauder focuses on strength, dealing physical damage with melee weapons and often gaining physical damage reduction from armor. The Ranger specializes in dexterity to wield bows and rapiers while gaining evasion from armor. The Witch utilizes her intelligence, attacking with wands and scepters while being protected by an energy shield. The Duelist combines strength and dexterity to fight with one-handed weapons such as swords and axes. The Duelist mixes evasion with armor to protect from enemy attacks. The Templar uses both strength and intelligence to fight with staves and scepters, and he can use magic as a traditional spellcaster or imbue his melee weapon with additional effects. The Shadow excels at dexterity and intelligence, fighting with claws and daggers. He is adept at landing critical strikes and has access to traps and mines to damage or hinder enemies. And then the Scion, available after unlocking her, uses all 3 stats equally, making her very versatile, and she starts in the center of the passive skill tree. Unlike many other RPGs, spells and attacks aren't directly locked to a particular character class. In fact, you don't even learn or train new active skills when leveling up. Skills are instead found on gems that you socket into your gear. Skill gems often have a number of requirements to use, from a particular stat minimum to wielding a specific weapon. The combination of skill gems and the universal passive skill tree means you have a lot of options, regardless of which character class you start with. That said, you're advised to choose a class that starts closer to the passive skills you want, so you're not wasting points to get to them. For newer players, this can be really overwhelming. If you don't plan most of your build ahead of time, you'll inevitably make mistakes that can hinder or outright ruin your overall build. While there are ways to unlearn passive skills here and there, you can't fully reset the skill tree very easily. Now, on one hand, I like that full resets aren't available, as it makes your decisions important, and it cuts down on that flavor of the month build idea that capitalizes on whatever combination seems strongest after an update. On the other hand, it's in no way friendly for new players who didn't realize how important point allocation really is. It typically means that you abandon your first character to either rebuild it making better decisions on the skill tree, re-rolling as something entirely different, or just quitting the entire game out of frustration. Speaking of frustration, I'd like to point out some obstacles that make playing alongside friends fairly disappointing. I have a friend that already had a level 40 character before I started playing this month, and another that had a level 20 character. Upon character creation, I had to choose one of 3 game modes: Standard, Breach, or Hardcore Breach. I discovered one friend was playing on Standard, and the other one chose Breach, leaving me in the awkward position of having to choose which one would be my default for the month, and of course forcing one friend to start over if they wanted to join the rest of us. Later that week, we realized that teaming up with characters of varying levels is incredibly boring anyway. If you have more free time than your friends, you'll probably want to roll an alt to enjoy solo play, keeping the other character back exclusively for teaming up. As I said at the start of the video, Path of Exile isn't intended to be an MMORPG, and I feel this kind of reinforces that statement. As for personal progress this week, I initially made a Templar on Standard, only to reroll as a Witch on Breach after only a few hours. I wanted to play a caster, and simply didn't like how slow and inaccurate the attacks of the Templar felt at the beginning. Breach also sounded like a neat feature that added some variety to exploration. You open these alternate realities, exposing waves of monsters. You slay them, and you can then fight like this Breach Lord boss that drops extra loot, including items that allow you to then invade their realm. Kind of a neat idea. Anyway, after about 20 hours of play, I have a level 30 witch now at the beginning of Act 3. I initially considered being an elemental damage caster, but was then lured away by the dark path of necromancy. I now command a small army of undead and have a handful of spells to buff them when things get hectic. This, of course, means I probably didn't make the optimal choices early on in the passive skill tree, but since I'm only playing for a month, I'm probably not going to fuss over it. Sadly, I think I'm out of time already for this episode. There's so much more to explain that unfortunately we'll have to wait. Next week, I plan on talking about support and passive gems, the importance of gear sockets, the currency system, quests, and whatever else I discover. You can join me on Breach or watch live Saturday through Wednesday nights, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on my Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/shenanigans1930. Remember to like, subscribe if you're enjoying this series, and I thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, take care, guys.
Come to me, Exile.
Ooh.
Let us speak
hello.
of death and desire.
Yes, let's speak of that. Just a moment. Yes, let's speak of that.
There you are, Exile. I was beginning to wonder if death had claimed you for herself.
Oh, come on now.
Mind you, if she had, I could put that fine physique of yours to good use.
Are you coming on to me?
It would be my pleasure to honor you so.
You're coming
But
on
that
to
can
me.
wait. There's art to be pursued.